Okay, the next case I want to talk about is Loving versus Virginia. And this has actually been talked about rather a lot recently. And again, I think that this gives us a perspective on where civil rights are in the United States. In 1967, so again, that's not really that long ago. That's when the courts finally went ahead and struck down laws. There were 16 states that had laws that prohibited interracial marriage. That there were laws on the books that said blacks and whites could not marry in 1967. And it wasn't challenged until then in Loving versus Virginia, where the courts finally struck that down and said, no, you cannot restrict marriage, blacks and whites together, from participating in the institution of marriage. And so as a result of this debate over same-sex marriage, people have been talking about Loving versus Virginia, that what marriage has been evolving over time, is what some people have argued. That the idea of what constitutes marriage has changed over time, because as late as 1967, there were some states that went ahead and said marriage does not include people of different races.
Were they concentrated mostly on the southern? Were they the southern states, or what states were they?
I don't know which states they were, but were they the southern states? Certainly. What do you guys think about the same-sex marriage debate? Is that a pro? Is there anybody who supports the idea of same-sex marriage? Interesting. See, young people have a completely different take on this. Okay, and then older people who oppose same-sex marriage. That is okay. That is interesting. That is very interesting. Do you guys mind talking about it just for a sec?
Sure.
So, Brett, give me the argument against.
I just go along the general lines that marriage should be between a man and a woman because of the idea that it creates more children. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just think it's worked so far. So I'll change it.
Okay. I saw as soon as you got that out, hands went up. So, Matthew.
I see marriage as traditionally being, between man and woman, but it's a religious practice, so I don't see the government has any authority to, pass any law favoring or preventing anyone from getting married.
So marriage.
And I oppose it because I oppose the government having any policy to do with marriage in general, because again, it's a religious thing. So
That's
the unions is, okay, but marriage as a whole, there shouldn't be any laws favoring or preventing it.
So, okay, Michael?
To counter Brett's argument, what about people that are sterile? They can't have kids. Should they marry? Should they be allowed to marry? Or
Well, no, I mean that's a whole other situation.
well, I'm saying.
Well, he was speaking to the idea that marriage is about procreation.
Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. I don't know how to counter that.
You got to stick to your guns, Brett. You just go like, no, sterilized people should not be able to. Old people, no.
I can't say that.
Good.
Religion doesn't have a monopoly over marriage. Other cultures have different ideas of marriage. Like, I know there's the, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim version of marriage where two men and women, but you look in like the Far East, people have been married for centuries, but it's not a religious, institution. So I mean, there's different kinds of marriage.
Okay. Good.
As far as like procreating, there's such thing as surrogates and stuff, like where you can donate and make more children.
Yeah, I just mean like in the grand scheme of things, men plus women make babies. That always works.
Okay. Do you need me to write that math problem on the board?
You know what I mean?
No, but I think the point they're raising is an interesting point. I've heard people connect marriage to procreation, and so now there's like some responses to that have been, one, there are people who don't, like my sister-in-law, her and her husband have no intentions of having kids. So the question is, should they marry? People who are sterile, should they marry? And then older people who are beyond their reproductive years, should they marry? If marriage is really about procreation, then why is it different? Is basically the question. So go ahead.
Well, isn't it just the ultimate question, whether or not you're in love with that person? If you truly are and you want to spend the rest of your life, then why not just get married? It should be simple as that. That's how I see it.
Okay.
But at the same time, the whole religious perspective, everybody does see.
What if you're in love with two women, and they're
Oh
both?
no, that's totally different. That's just.
Whoa, that was quick.
Okay, it's one thing where
Let's say there's two women, you're in love with them, and they're both in love with you, and you all want to get married, and you're all.
No, you're just asking for trouble. I'm serious.
Well, no, I agree. One wife is more than enough.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
And I know that's recorded, and she agrees.
But morally speaking, not even morally. You're just.
Whoa! You jumped right into morality. That was quick. That was a quick dive.
No, let me take out morally. Logically speaking, you're gonna get into a lot of trouble if you're gonna marry more than one person, because let's be honest, like, you get married, you're gonna have issues with your wife. That's just normal in marriage. But let's be honest. Let's say I'm just gonna go straight out. You're banging one chick, the other girl's gonna get pissed off. Yeah, they're married, but it's gonna cause issues. I don't care what people say. It's already hard enough dealing with one marriage. To be tangled up with a triangular marriage, that's just asking for trouble.
Okay, but if three adults who are all intelligent people, should they be able to opt for that decision?
Okay, these are obviously three people that are into some weird. I don't know. It just sounds weird. I was gonna say they're into orgies, but that just doesn't sound.
There we go. I like how Nick enunciated the banging doctrine. There will be no questions about the banging doctrine on the file, and I never said that. Okay, go ahead.
Well, logically speaking, if we're going with procreation, you want to marry more women so you can have more kids, but but like between three adults, if they're all consenting, I think that's like a violation of in terms of marriage as a contract. Having two separate contracts, that can be a conflict of interest between.
You can have three people start a business.
Oh, I mean, but I'm talking about the contract of marriage.
Oh.
Like how the state would recognize it. Like a business, do all the differences. But like marriage between one man, one woman, one man.
So the government should regulate how many people can get married, but not their sexual orientation.
Like that's how I.
And why again?
Just as it could be a conflict of interest where it's like contradiction of interest where one man gets married in Texas, marries and then he moves to California, marries another woman there. Two different states, two different sets of laws and recognition of the marriage, and even if they're all consenting, I think that's just more of it's kind of just messing with ourselves.
I agree that it would be complicated. The question is whether or not the government should be able to prohibit it.
Well, the government,
If somebody wants to engage in a complicated, people engage in all kinds of complicated relationships, right?
Our government, they give benefits for marriage, so but should they get two sets of benefits for marriage if they're all?
No, because no. Oh, I see. But you could work out all that stuff. So, anyways, it's worthwhile to keep in mind. So people talk about opposing same-sex marriage on religious grounds, and other people have been adamant about religion shouldn't be part of this. And I would suggest to you that polygamy and the arguments against polygamy are something that the major religions now all embrace. Arguments against polygamy, and I'm not entirely sure that that's not religion or ethics shaping who is and isn't allowed to get married to in a different way. I don't think it's obvious that it's not, and so I think it's just worthwhile to consider. I mean, I err on the side of letting people be free and do whatever they want to do as long as they don't impact on me. So if somebody wants to marry 3 women, go for it. Right? I'd say ask around first, and I don't mean this bad to women. I'm not criticizing women. I'm sure she wouldn't want to have 2 husbands. I'm sure of that. Okay. The next case, Swan versus Charlotte. We can just call it Swan. The Swan case. This was a case in '71 where the court ordered busing to address 2 different forms of segregation. I talk about this case mostly so that you guys are familiar with these 2 forms of segregation. There's what's called de facto segregation and then de jure segregation. Okay? De jure. D-E-J, just
We're going to try to spell it on the test.
jury. Just spelled jury wrong. Put an E instead of Y. So de facto segregation says segregation due to past social economic conditions and residential racial patterns. What does that mean? We are integrated for the most part in this culture, in American culture. If you look around the classroom, we have Hispanics, we have blacks, we have Asians, we have all kinds of people in here. But is the city of Los Angeles integrated? Is the city? Or is it the case that you go to some areas, and they will be the Hispanic areas, then you can go to the Asian areas, then you can go to the black areas, then you go to the white areas, and there are some areas that are integrated where you get a mix, but there is certainly segregation that's still happening. It's voluntary, it's not being imposed, but there is still some segregation that's going on. This is what we call de facto segregation. That the reason that people are in, some of the reasons that people are in different areas is economics, right? That whites will be, generally speaking, at least in this area, in more affluent areas. Blacks will be in less affluent areas, as will Hispanics. And then part of it is just that people tend to want to be around people like themselves. Right? People like to live around people who are like themselves, so they collect. So the courts have talked about de facto segregation as being a concern, the fact that people are still separated. And then there's de jure segregation, and this is segregation due to laws and administrative decisions by public agencies. Segregation like the Jim Crow laws. De jure segregation is basically over. There is no de jure segregation where the courts, where the government actively keeps people apart based on race. But there is still some de facto segregation. And I think we're going to stop there.